You're listening to The Low and No Show, a podcast that tells the inspiring stories from brands and the founders. My name is Johnny Stevens, the founder of Better Without, the app that helps people discover low and no drinks. I'm sitting down with guests to hear their stories, learn about their products, and the lessons they've learned. Hello and welcome to another episode. I'm here today with Ben Wood from Basic Booch. Now, Basic Booch is a 2021 startup, so very new, and I'm really excited to hear the story, some of the lessons learnt so far. So welcome in, Ben. Hello.
Hi, Johnny. Really good to be here. How's it going?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Sitting at home, working away. Doing the Zoom working thing.
Very good. Very good. So, tell me a bit more about Basic Booch.
Sure. Well, Basic Booch is a naturally booze-free brew. It's got the kind of the attitude, the drinkability of a beer, but it's not beer. It's a session kombucha, which we brewed to be really approachable, really drinkable. So it's kind of got all the joy of having a pint, but without the hangover and with a taste that's a little bit different.
Very nice. It's a really interesting one, this, because this is a new category that I've sort of discovered that is almost filling a gap for people that like kombucha. I think kombucha is a very sort of acquired taste. There's not everyone likes it, but it's typically it's not something you would drink long or anything like that. So having something that's actually more of just a drink that you could have instead of a pint or anything like that. It's an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of exactly the idea, really. I think I love drinking kombucha, but I think a lot of kombuchas out there are pretty strong tasting. They can be a bit medicinal. It's certainly not for everyone. But I think like there's so much to kind of to say for it, particularly when you're thinking about times when you might reach for a beer otherwise, or even an alcoholic beer. It's naturally booze free. You don't have to take the alcohol out. It's just that's how it comes, and it's got that. It's a little bit sweet, but it's not sweet like a lot of soft drinks, and it's not fruity. It's got a really nice kind of beer like palate to it. So I think this was almost kind of got me onto it in the first place. It's like, actually, drinking a kombucha, you could be drinking a beer, but you're just not. It's something a little bit different, and particularly with things like sour beers out there and those kind of styles. It's actually I think there's kind of, it's quite an exciting area. Well, which is why I launched it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's almost crossing over, as you say. There's a lot of sour beers that are very similar in that sort of in that taste. But I think, I mean, your product's very balanced. I've obviously tried it, and it's just a very refreshing drink. And I think it is the type of product that actually you could see actually on a nice hot summer's day, that having something that is a bit different and not your sort of standard beer.
Yeah, well, so I think what we've done with kind of brewing the drink and kind of creating the drink is try and make it as drinkable as possible. That's the kind of the central thing. It's like, it needs to be approachable. It needs to be something you can drink, not just in kind of small little
not small shots
amounts in the morning. It's not small shots. It's a kind of an evening drink. It's for drinking in kind of pints. We've got this kind of like pint type glass to put it in, and the idea is that you can drink it like that. It's a proudly pasteurized drink, so we kind of take the kombucha health credential bacteria thing out of it, which is sort of quite contentious in the kombucha world. But the idea is that that's fantastic if you want to have some good gut bacteria in the morning. But this drink is about having a great time when other people are drinking beer. So you don't want your gut medicine kind of swashing around in your glass. What you want is something that's fun to drink, and you can have a couple. So I mean,
it's very good.
That's what we're going for.
I mean, it's interesting. We've created a new category on the app called Alternative Brews, which is focused on I say different brews that and we work with you in terms of what is the right name for this, what do we want to call it, because it is so new, and actually part of that, I'm sure you found, is trying to almost educate people on what it is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like I maybe sort of did that like pushy parent thing, with with the brand, which is like, well, no, it's not that. My one is totally different, but but I think that's it. Like, I think one of the big challenges that's ahead for me and for us and for the brand is like, is getting people to understand how to drink it. The idea when I first kind of thought of this, which is a few years ago now, but also when I first started planning kind of pre-COVID, the idea was like all around pubs, because if you see a drink like this in a pub being drunk in a pint glass next to a beer, you understand it. You understand, okay, so this is how you drink it. This it becomes really natural, right? It's a little bit harder when everyone's kind of sitting at home drinking themselves, but I keep kind of flashing up merch on the screen for anyone who isn't looking on the video here. But like, we've got Basic Booch in a 330 ml can. It's kind of designed to feel like a beer. Like, the branding is a bit like a kind of accessible craft beer. Hopefully that's the kind of vibe we're looking for, to try and give those cues to people that, like, this is something that when other people have got beers, or if you yourself are drinking a beer but want something non-alcoholic or want something a bit different, this is what you can have instead. And I think that's the idea of like creating this new category in drinking occasion. I mean, you'll know better than anyone. This is the challenge across the whole of the no and low space, isn't it? It's like it's a great starting point to say these are drinks that you can sub in for an alcoholic version of that. But actually, the future has got to be, it's not just a substitute. It's a drink that you might choose. Why not? Even if you're a drinker, or if you're drinking the same night, you just, why not? I'll take the next one that happens to be that, because it's tasty, because it's fun, because it's kind of fits the mood that I'm in at the moment, and that's the idea.
Nice.
But it's a challenge. It's a massive challenge.
It is. It is, and it's I think it's similar to what Seedlip had to do a good few years ago in terms of bringing a product into a market that just almost wasn't there. I mean, they did a great job, and I think all the brands I speak to are very thankful of actually what they've done, because they pioneered that through. So hopefully you can pioneer this next alternative brews through.
But that's it. I mean, you go into the supermarket now, and particularly in kind of the bigger stores and in kind of some of the more forward-thinking supermarkets, you get that space, which, from what I can see, is essentially invented by Seedlip, which is kind of it's soft drinks, but it's non-alcoholic drinks, but it's not next to the soft drinks. It's on the beer aisle, it's on the wine aisle, it's next to the spirits. It's got Seedlip up there, but it's also got a whole range of some of the exciting drinks that are coming through in this category. And I think you're right, like them pioneering the idea that this is not a lesser substitute was hugely important.
Yeah, it is. And I see, in terms of you look at the last 12 months and how the shelf space within the supermarkets has grown for no and low is incredible. I mean, I went the other day to my local Tesco, and it had a whole fridge full of no and low beers, ciders, wines, as well as probably 3-4 meters of space, all no and low. And I just think that is amazing. Incredible. 2-3 years ago, you would be lucky if you got a foot of the shelf space. So the fact that it's growing, and actually, isn't it brilliant that actually they're putting it in the fridge already? So it's people can already go and get it, go to drink it. It's and it actually starts to educate people on how it should be served and everything. So where the supermarkets are really, really growing, and filling that gap for where hospitality obviously can't operate at the moment, which is brilliant. So just talk to me a bit in terms of you said you came up with the idea a few years ago. Talk to me about sort of coming up with the idea through to launch, and everything in between.
Everything in between, yeah. So, I had the idea kind of. I think it was definitely summer, so it must have been kind of nearly 3 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago, because I've been kind of. I love the pub, right? This is where it kind of all came from, really, is the pub. Like, I love going to the pub. Like, I love seeing friends in the pub. The pub is an amazing institution. Like, it's an amazing space. It's, this kind of basically public space where, you meet people. It's got this fantastic dynamic of kind of discussion, conversation, meeting new people, like kind of sociability that is just particularly now sitting in lockdown, you just think it just is magical, isn't it?
Yeah,
like,
it is.
magical kind of thing to think about. And I was kind of like, we'll go to the pub in lots of different occasions, like after work with friends, different stuff. And it really struck me, in particular, like in kind of after work, where you're going with people who you work with, not necessarily people you sort of are all choosing to go to the pub. How if you're not drinking, or even if you don't like beer, actually the pub, it doesn't work in quite the same way. It's so centered around beer. Like, it's so much about being there with a pint in your hand, having those conversations. And not to say that people can't get involved with that, but I know plenty of people who are in that situation, and it's just not. It doesn't have the same kind of excitement as it does for me as a beer drinker. And I kind of thought, well, what is it like? Why is it not the same that if you're there with a because at that point there were some kind of, I suppose, the seeds of No and Low, which is the kind of, I don't know, like adult soft drinks, like elderflower fizz or whatever it is, those kind of days. Why is it not the same, like having that, with a straw in and a small thing, and it just isn't. So I was like, well, it must be something about beer, and it's not just the drink. It's like it's the kind of the look and feel of it. It's the way it's served, but it is the quality of the drink. You drink it in a certain way. You sip it, you glug it, you have rounds of it. It's kind of it is a naturally sociable kind of thing, and a lot of soft drinks at the time just weren't. And I think still today, like the pub, and if it was open, and bars and stuff, it is still quite a kind of challenging place for people who are choosing not to drink. So I was like, what would it look like to have a brew, kind of a brew for all of us, is kind of was the idea, like for everyone, that everyone could kind of drink, whether you're a drinker or not, and still feel part of that amazing community. So that was kind of the thing that was lodged in my head. And at the same kind of time, I drank my first kombucha. It was quite new at the time into shops and stuff. And I sort of thought, wow, this is the stuff, because it's like the flavor profile is exactly right for that. It's not sweet, it's not fruity, it's not calorific, it's not alcoholic. Like it hits a lot of the buttons, but it's totally wrong for pubs at the moment, because it's in health food shops, and it's still the case, I think, for the vast majority of kombuchas. it's stuck in this particular kind of idea, both for the drink and for the kind of the way it's presented, which is kind of, for the drink, it's kind of pretty strong, medicinal. Like, it's not a session drink. And Basic Booch is meant to be a session kombucha. So there's that. But then from a positioning, and like from where you can get it, is in health food shops. It tends to be quite kind of, I suppose, worthy, maybe is the word. I don't know. It has a certain kind of culture around kombucha that isn't very accessible. It feels like it's part of a particular kind of health food scene. It's quite premium. It's not necessarily the sort of thing you'd grab. And sort of the idea and kind of the name came around at that point as well. It's like, it needs to be something accessible. It needs to be something basic that you can just grab and feel comfortable drinking, and that could feel at home in a pub. So that was kind of the idea. As lots of people listening to this, I'm sure will kind of empathize with, you have lots of ideas of stuff. You think, oh, wouldn't that be good? Wouldn't that be good? And then you sort of forget about them and they don't happen. And I sort of, I kept it in the back of my mind, but at the same time, I kind of assumed that someone was going to do it. There's a lot of, there was already starting to be some kind of movement around No and Low, and I sort of thought it was going to happen. Then, a year and a half later, whenever it was, so the end of 2019 coming into 2020, I felt like a a challenge. I wanted to do something for myself, to start something, to kind of take on a challenge. And this was just still like niggling away at me, this idea, and this kind of this sort of almost like a social need, I suppose, a social need of allowing people to come together in these kind of spaces that I think is sort of hugely valuable to society. So I was like, okay, well, nobody's done it. Why don't I try it? So I decided I kind of committed myself to it. I was like, right, I'm gonna make a go of it and see where it takes me. So I got my kind of home brewing kit. I started making kombucha in my kitchen, started looking into the kind of how you do that and what it can be like, to try and see whether is it possible to make this version of kombucha that is more drinkable, that doesn't have like, is it just naturally going to be a difficult drink? The answer is no. Like, you can definitely brew it to be more approachable. So I started doing that, and then, you know, boom, COVID comes along, and you know, like everyone at that time, I kind of you know, went into survival mode. This wasn't my top priority. I spent a couple of months with it on the back burner, and then it kind of came to the summer of 2020, and I was kind of in a bit more of the right headspace to kind of take it back on again. And I thought, you know, it was something to focus on during that lockdown, and the kind of the difficulty of 2020 was like, you know, I've got this project, I can try and make something of it, and, you know, although under difficult circumstances, kind of use the time to focus my energy on getting it going. So that's what I did. So from kind of summer 2020 through to the end of the year, because we launched on 1st of January 2021 for dry January. So as you said at the beginning, kind of a 2021 baby. So I used that time to go from home brewing to having a product. So that meant well, it's funny. The first kind of challenge is, my misconception was, because it's brewed in a pretty similar way to beer, you can that the kind of the infrastructure and the how I could approach it would be the same, which is, you know, if you're trying to start and grow a beer company, you do a bit of home brewing, then you get some space in someone else's brewery and have a go. And I thought, great, I'll be able to do that. Like, I know some people who brew, I'll be able to, and it's just not the case. You just can't do that with kombucha and beer. It just doesn't work. And like, the world of kombucha is not developed enough to be able to like rent out. It's just, there's just not enough people doing it. It's still quite a small, although it's growing, it's still quite a small category. So I had to find ways to get around that. I found this brilliant brewer who was kind of willing to work with me on turning my home brew kind of recipe and approach into something that works on a commercial scale. So we spent a lot of time doing that. Branding, I kind of got a friend who's done the branding here, which I think is, you know, I'm delighted with that.
That's great. Fantastic. It's a really good brand.
Thanks, I appreciate it. And also another friend my friend Kata, who's kind of come on board as a sort of founding member of the team, who has a kind of, her background is in marketing, but specifically in kind of food and drink. And so she kind of has a lot of understanding of the startup world in that sense. So she's kind of part of the team, kind of helping on that as well. So it's kind of, you know, the other stuff is just starting a business. Like, it's incredible the amount of. I mean, you'll know this from starting Betty with that. Like, it's a lot of work. You know, setting up, you know, incorporating your company, kind of doing your accounting, your tax, trademarks, like all of this stuff. You know, and the boring things as well. Like, I cannot tell you like how many hours I spent looking up cardboard boxes for like delivering booch to people. Like, it's just astounding. Like, the stuff that, you know, the stuff that no one tells you about starting a business is a bit of a cliche, but, you know, where your time goes on this stuff is not necessarily the places that you think is going to go. But
and everything takes so much longer.
It does. It really does. It really does. I mean, again, like, from your experience, like starting an app, I can't imagine the amount of kind of time that goes into doing the coding and building all that kind of stuff. But I suppose like the parallel for making Basic Booch is like just the kind of layer upon layer of things. You know, you think it's just it's a drink, but then the drink is in a can and it's got a label and it needs boxes, it needs logistics, it needs the business sitting behind it, and there's a whole bunch of stuff, and that's before you even get to sort of starting to sell it to people and to sort of trying to get people interested, trying to approach customers, and yeah. So I suppose that got us to 1st of January. We launched then. Which was fantastic. I mean, it was an amazing day to kind of finally be able to be sort of sending out the first cans to people. We got very early on, for launch actually, we got one of the kind of local bottle shops, which is 12-ounce bottle shop, got to stock it. So it was like on the shelves next to kind of the likes of Big Drop Brewing and like some of these fantastic well-established people to like just see it on the shelf was fantastic. So we kind of launched. Being COVID, I'd love to be out there kind of at events, speaking to people, giving some cans away, seeing what people think, doing that whole testing thing. Obviously that's not happening, so we kind of used social media as much as possible to try and replicate that. So sort of trying to get into communities, particularly like the guys that that you're engaging with better without, which is this amazing online community of kind of alcohol-free beer and no and low drinkers who have been fantastic in kind of helping over the last particularly over like dry January, like to be interested in it and to kind of take notice. We started off in January kind of giving away free cans, so just getting people to pay for delivery and giving kind of 4 cans away and trying to get feedback from people, see whether they liked it. So absolutely delighted with the response, and so I suppose the idea now is to go from there.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's really good to get that initial feedback and that initial launch and just get the product into people's hands. I think that is there's, as you say, it's very hard to launch a product now, is something that and actually when we're out of the pandemic, we probably will never have to do it in the same way. However, I think there's a lot of lessons that we can go, the power of social media is phenomenal, and we found it's amazing how actually most of the brands that I can think of, some of the new brands that launched last year have just built it up through social, and that's they put so much emphasis on to making it easy for customers to buy, making the product attractive, but actually it is that thing of back to sort of old-fashioned marketing. You have to see something 7 times before you start to buy it. Well, actually, that's suddenly so much easier when you're on social, because it does pop up all the time. And the minute you start to search for stuff or whatever, then it suddenly appears in your timeline, which is always very scary. But it's one of those things that it's a great way of getting in front of people. And then when the pubs and eventually do open, actually you've got that brand awareness. Actually people will want to go to because they know the places that try it. And you make a really interesting point around pubs being great places, which they are. And I think it's really interesting to see the companies that are adopting no and low. And there are people who are like, no, it's very anti it, it's going to destroy the pubs and everything. But actually, I actually think no and low could have more damage on things like coffee shops, where typically people who don't drink won't always feel comfortable in a pub, so they will go to a coffee shop because it's obviously non-alcoholic. Where actually I wonder whether, if the offering is better, actually a pub environment's lovely, it's very relaxed, it's very and it's a lot less busy than a coffee shop.
I think you're right. I mean, the kind of the resistance to the idea of non-alcoholic drinks in pubs, I don't quite understand it. I think that from my perspective, it's got to be something to do with that cultural element of it. Like I feel like maybe those people are thinking, oh, does it mean that everyone's going to be sitting around here with fruity mocktails and with bits of pineapple sticking out to the top, and that wouldn't be right for the pub. And I couldn't agree more. Like, I think the idea of sitting down with, like, there are so many kind of cues, and I don't know, the pub is just people don't want the pub to change or die, and I think that's exactly right. And I think it's just about having the right options that are non-alcoholic, not about having no non-alcoholic options. And actually, the way that the pub is going to survive is by providing more options for more people, so that younger generations, particularly, who are we know are drinking less, find it their place as well. We don't, the pub has to be, it is an inclusive place, and part of that, I think, looking forward, has to be about having an inclusive offer of drinks, and I want Basic Booch to be one of those offers. But I think no matter what it is, like, it's allowing a new generation of people, or people from all walks of life, to take ownership of the pub in the way that people for generations have themselves.
No, definitely. And everything you say is right. And I think one of the key takeaway, obviously it's moved on massively in the last 12 months anyway, but one of the biggest takeaways when I speak to people is actually they're willing to pay the price. The price is not an issue here. It's not that they're expecting it to be miles less or anything like that. That people are quite happy to pay £4 for a draft pint of non-alcoholic beer. That's not a problem, and it is just getting that scale. And I think the great thing with obviously what you're doing is it again gives another style drink. People who don't maybe want beer or don't want wine, it just gives another drink that's not a soft drink, because actually people don't want to sit there drinking loads and loads of sugar and everything, because again, from a health conscious point of view, that's what we've been told to avoid.
Absolutely. And like, if you're someone who's choosing not to drink at the pub, there's a bunch of reasons why you might not be. You might never drink, but you also might just be choosing not to that day because you're playing sport in the morning, or you're going for a run in the morning, or whatever the reason. Like, often those reasons also mean you don't want to down 5 cans of Coke. It's like, in fact, I'm sure never recommend downing 5 cans of Coke, but you don't want to swap out alcohol for sugar. That's just not the point, is it?
No.
Something you said before I think is really interesting, which is like the starting in 2020, or in my case just into 2021, does mean that the challenge of that does mean that you have to be more innovative, and maybe actually kind of create some I don't know, has it made, maybe when I think about the development of Basic Booch, maybe it's like made it a better product to launch with, because it has made it difficult, so it's made me have to think about it a bit more in a bit more detail, because I think my plan before had been as I said, like, all around the pub, and obviously that hasn't been possible, but it's become clear to me that although the genesis of the idea is in the pub, like, it's not just about the pub. Like, there is a huge kind of growing need for people, or like desire from people to want to drink non-alcoholic drinks that are as satisfying as having, I think that's actually important, satisfying as having an alcoholic drink. But when they're at home, and even when they're in lockdown, we know that there's kind of been a boom over the last year, and so having to develop the drink in that environment, and think about actually what are the ways that people would want to drink a drink like this, even when they're, like, regardless of the pub, just in their everyday lives. And I think there is a real need for it, and hopefully it's kind of going to hit the mark for those people as well. But at the same time, it gets me really excited about the idea of, we're all excited about leaving lockdown at some point, but excited about the idea of pubs reopening and trying to get into there. But also things like I think for me, sports and music are really interesting, because if you're watching sport either in a stadium or even at home, like, beer again is the natural go-to drink, and a lot of other stuff doesn't hit the mark, and I'm hoping that Basic Booch will hit the mark for that. And the same with music. You know, when have you been to a gig and sort of stood there with a gin and tonic or a like whatever? Like it is beer. So again, I think for everyone in this kind of sector, if whatever you want to call it, category, like there's lots of exciting opportunities, like both at the moment, but also like the new world that we're going to be entering back into, I think hopefully will look quite different.
It will, and I think it's going to be a very exciting time, and I think who knows how long that will be, but I think, as you say, it's using this time now, plan, and actually, the great thing is you can gather all the feedback, you can get the brand awareness out there, so actually you are, when you have the opportunity to go into hospitality, as a business, you'd be in a very different position. So it's an exciting one.
Yeah, it is.
And in terms of where can people find you, find more about I guess how to get the product?
Well, so for starter, you can go to basic-booch.com, where you can order directly. We're speaking into the future a little bit on this podcast. I'm hoping by the time this comes out, there might be other places as well to be able to pick it up. But at the moment, we're just selling direct to consumer, and again, hopefully in an independent shop near you sometime
Very
soon.
Good. We'll make sure we'll put those in the bio when this is released. We'll make sure that all the links are in the bio. Obviously, you're now under Alternative Brews on the app, so we'll keep track there as well if anyone wants to find it. And as you say, we're interested to follow the journey, see where it goes.
Fantastic. Well, thanks very much for sort of chatting to me about this, and I think I'm excited for Better Without as well, and like where it's going to go over the coming months and period, and to be on there so early and be part of it is a real privilege.
No, thank you. I know it's an exciting time. There's lots happening, and it's just a very, very exciting time with things changing all the time. So I think once hospitality opens, like you, I'm very keen for that to open. So thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks, Johnny.